Well, good evening to you and welcome to Rodney Groundings this Sunday evening. I'm your host, Ian Abrams, and on the program with me this evening is Brother TACUMA, OGUNSEYE. And as is customary, we'll be talking about issues that are current in the political, social, and economic landscape of Guyana. I want to welcome you to Walter Rodney Groundings, Brother TACUMA.
It's good to be here to continue our work.
Okay, so after months of hearing nothing, we now heard that the file for the Boston's case has gone through the DPP. What's your thought on that new development?
Well, it's late in the making, but I'm happy that at least we've seen some amount of movement on the matter, and I hope that the DPP will give a speedy response and a positive response. But what I still find amazing, even all the reports that mention that the file was sent to the
You're
DPP,
still in telling
they ain't
us.
telling you what's the officer's name. This is what I find really.
This is an invisible.
Yeah, this is a
and,
visible
and
person,
yeah, but
and I really can't understand it.
no, it's a common feature in not the police are doing it, but even in our newspapers and our broadcast media. The general way our journalists treat with people who are not considered to be up there is always one that is questionable. So they will tell you a prominent businessman has been arrested and so on, and then they don't reveal the name, and it's never disclosed of what the transgression may be revealed, but then
Not the person.
not the person. But if it's an ordinary citizen, then the name is always upfront and exposed. What is the reason for hiding? You know,
Yeah, but what boggles my mind, I can understand the PPP in the state and the police probably maybe have instructions to not to make the name available. But I
yeah,
can't understand, the press who's supposed to be objective and who's supposed to be going after these things and to providing information in the public seems to be with the administration and the police to keep this thing,
and
this
yeah,
name
keeping
a mystery.
yeah. It's real sickening.
Anyway.
But we don't even know. I mean, the file has gone to the DPP. Uh, you don't know what the
What
files
files
contain.
contain.
I mean, if it's doctored in such a way that the DPP, in making our decisions, she has
Nothing to work with.
nothing to work with, then you understand.
Yeah.
So even in making this disclosure, we have to be
Vigilant.
vigilant and
Yeah.
watchful because we understand the circumstances. We know what transpired. It was public knowledge that the man was assassinated in his bed, all right, naked, and that he had no confrontation as they initially disclosed. And so we have to really be conscious and not allow it to slip. They seem to be giving us the headway in some kind of development in that matter, right? But
Yeah.
let's hope.
Yeah, we on Groundings will be very vigilant.
Let's
And
hope.
we will be on the case on this matter.
Mhm. Now, we've got complaints about Western Union and the way they, particularly over the Christmas season, their treatment of people whose remittances would have come from relatives overseas. I mean, I don't know if you want to.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of people have been complaining, and some people, been saying that you have to spend many hours in the line
And
before
it's
you could get attention to, be tended to. And in many cases, you go at one Western Union, you spend a lot of hours there, then you try to see, well, okay, let you see if you go to get more speedy attention to another one. You got the same problem. And somebody was telling me in one case over the Christmas, it was almost like a riotous situation at one of the Western Union's place. And I think that as a money providing a service of bringing remittance to the country, I think they're wrong long enough to improve the efficiency, and especially when it comes to the holidays.
Yeah, but they only have, normally they have one person dealing with whomever is there. It doesn't matter how large the crowd is. They normally have one person dispensing the cash to people, and it really, if you know that it's a peak period, then you need to
Yeah, yeah,
employ
probably get
somehow
more
find
staff,
other
find some
people.
way, you know. It's not fair to the consumers, you know. It's not fair because at the end of the day, they're being paid to provide a service.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a franchise out of Grace Kennedy. I think Grace
Yes,
Kennedy
Grace
is the
Kennedy.
mother um, company, and I know that somebody had mentioned to me that they had once wrote Grace Kennedy about the matter,
And they were pretty flippant about
they
their
weren't satisfied with the response.
response.
You know, Grace Kennedy almost treated as though it's a Guyanese matter. You know,
Yeah. It's
you know,
nothing to
you know,
be of
it's
concern
not much to them.
to them.
You know.
Well, let's hope, because and then the the situation now is that there are so many demands on people for information about this, about that, and the other, and so the process becomes a lengthy one sometimes. And if you know it's going to be, because it was all over Georgetown,
Mhm.
all right, even on the East Coast you had people waiting for quite a while in lines. Then you need to improve
Yeah, you need to improve.
on your service, all right? Uh, I don't know where customer relations have really gone, but these days it seems as though the old adage of the customer is right.
Think of the past, boy. This is when I was younger. Think of the
Those
past,
things don't
boy.
factor in anymore, especially when you have, a monopoly, you have near monopoly situation, because it's Grace Kennedy and
And money grab.
Money Graham.
Yeah.
So we don't have many options available to the citizens. Possibly, if we can have alternatives, then
Competition may,
competition will.
may drive efficiency.
Right, right, right. These are some short issues that we're dealing with. So we are looking forward to the DPP's response to that file that it is alleged was sent to her by the police in relation to the Boston matter. And Western Union, we were hoping that you're going to improve your service to the people. You see, the thing is, I mean, if people don't send them money, if there is no business, then you
Yeah,
don't have,
yeah.
your entity is of no use. I mean, so I don't know why they continue to be, Grace Kennedy continues to be able, so it's not a matter of importance. There was some arrest of a sister in Denham still. I have no much details, but maybe you can highlight that concern.
I'm trying to remember the sister name, but I got an urgent call yesterday
Okay.
around midday, you know, from a WPA person and a consistent viewer of what Rodney Groundings to tell me, and he called the sister by name. I can't remember her name, so I don't want to guess and see the wrong name. But she's a regular participant on the Kadaki's Ken's TV morning show, and Dr. Hines Politics
Politics
101. She participated there, and you know she's very active on front full with her criticisms of the government, you know, and the defense of the coalition consistence in the African community and so forth. So she's one of the militant, what do you call it, virtual fighters.
Okay.
And apparently, she had an exchange, you know, with another sister, another female, and apparently that led to the cyber crime unit being urged probably by some political, you know, the PAP now have persons who are paying attention to all of those
Yeah,
cyber
monitoring.
monitoring thing. And apparently, the police was instructed to go to her house and they arrest her. And I think they put her on a charge relative to the cyber crime. But I'm still to get full clarity. But I think what is important there is for us to recognize that the government is in an active repression at the level. and I'm certain they're not doing the same for PPP sponsored or PPP associated or sites that are friendly to the PPP.
Yeah,
And
and
I'm
people
sure
who even go onto KDAM's program
and
and,
cost out and
and
things.
cost out and so on,
They don't go after them.
they give them the leverage to see
See?
and to do whatever they want.
So this is a
Right?
new form of repression
So we're not saying it's correct, but if you're going to be dealing with people for infringements, then it must be
across the board.
right, some kind of even-handed approach, and we don't see that happening. All right, it's a concern. Well, this use of the police is really of a concern. My information received is that the person who's supposed to be heading the force is really at its wit's end in terms of, because you have two other agents connected to the PPP, one of them associated with the killing of the tree in Linden, and another one, a brutal fellow, they call him brutal, whatever it is, associated with his name. But they have been basically doing whatever they want in relation to instructions from the PPP, even with promotions. I understand that a list was submitted by the commission is not, so the senior people cannot be promoted, but those junior ranks who could have been promoted, that a list was submitted by the acting commissioner, it is alleged, but these two agents went behind his back with another list to their, acolytes in the PPP. And the thing is now, when the list is being submitted, because you have people who have been in the force for 20 years and so on, and so I understood that the gentleman was saying, man, that we can't allow people who are in the force for just 3 months and 2 months to be promoted to corporal and lance corporal, and you have these people here who've been serving the force for so long. But the question is always now asked, are they our people? When appointments are to be made and the our people refer to
PPP.
PPP people, all right? And so there are two lists, and so because of the infighting there, the people who should have been promoted have not. It's a concern, really, because it's denying people their just right. We've raised this issue before. I mean, where people just got into the force and were just promoted to sergeant and all these things within 3 months and so on. So it's really driving some kind of disquiet in the police force, but I don't know why people are so passive in these military and paramilitary agencies, that they are not forceful and frontal in their you're a disciplined force, but you have to let that discipline be exercised for you, just as you exercise it. And if people are not, infringing your right, not allowing you to acquire the gains that you should have, and they're infringing on your rights to promotion and so on, then you have to speak out.
Yeah.
But there is so much fear now.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't understand the depth of fear in this society, under this government, and the agents of the PPP.
And you see, a lot of those chaps are, whether they like it or not, are African Guyanese.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And, they feel there's little alternative for them. And then, after persons work in the public sector for so long, and you earn years of service,
You
you
don't
don't want to disrupt or to get knocked off or, to get victimized and lose all of that service because it affects your pension and your livelihood. So, while, one of the things I have always benefited from in my politics, from the time I come out of school, I'm in the market, working either with my mother and then, by myself in the market. And I always had the freedom of action. And I know a lot of other students of my age group and so who are politically inclined, but they play it safe because they want to build a career and so forth and so forth. So I think a lot of the kinds of pressures on people in those services, and the government takes advantage of it. Strategically, they takes advantage of it because The way they are dealing with the police force is unconstitutional. It's a violation of the constitution. It's an improper, intervention by the executive.
It's
But it's deliberate and purposeful.
yeah, but I mean, and this business about our people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
people should be promoted on merit,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And even with the appointments to new positions now, whenever people are to be appointed to positions, the question is always asked, is it our people? you know, so
And not our people necessarily in the ethnic sense, our people in the political sense,
both,
because
in
they
both
use it
sense,
in both senses.
both
But they use,
sense,
you see,
both sense.
when they're dealing with the African, the police force, they're trying to use place of the police force, the army, to recruit Africans.
No, 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 no. In the police force and in the army, no, there is a deliberate attempt to subvert young Africans from getting into those.
No, I'm talking about recruitment at that level.
Okay.
I mean, those who are already in, and they got to promote them. They're trying to get them on the PP side. If you toe a line and be associated with boys, your promotion is guaranteed. But if you don't do that, well,
yeah, a mandate has been passed
Yeah.
that more when they're hiring now that Indians have to
Yeah.
in
And that's good.
the
That's good. I'm very clear. I don't know why would an ethnic community who is so entrenched in the economy and business of the country don't want to take responsibilities for the defense of the assets and defense of the country. I want them a lot in the army too.
Yeah, but they're trying to if the people don't want to go, they're forcing, and they've been trying this for years, right? But
But my attitude is that they should be welcome.
I don't have a problem with that either. I have no problem with that. Right. So that's an issue. You see, I mean, our society now is becoming so. We're going way back to where we were in the previous 23 years prior to 2015. Because even at the Cyril Potter College now, what's his name had started this No Child, Sheikh Bash had started this No Child Left Behind thing where students were just passed through the system whether they could read, write. And now my understanding is that the madam in charge has instructed the principal and the lecturers of the Cyril Potter College that no student who is working to become a teacher in the system should be failed. That it cannot be given less than 55%. All right. Now these are people who are going into the education system to teach people's children, and some of them have failed so badly, I understood, that at least 4 lecturers have said that their conscience would not allow them to deal with this situation. Now the reason is that when the college has its graduation sometime next month, she wants to be seen as having the largest turnout of graduates at the, at the institution. She ain't concerned with the quality anymore of the education. And it's a sad thing for our society. Because if you are going to put people who are of poor quality in the system, then the system is going to fail.
Yeah, produce poor quality products.
Poor quality teachers,
and
poor quality
students.
But they don't care. I mean, all they look at is a lot about themselves and making it appear as though the PVP is doing great. So you have, so I was telling a colleague that, I had someone who started college and I dropped out. She said, let him go back. You can't fail now. You ain't even got to do nothing.
And you pass.
And you pass. You understand? So there's a message that is out there. Go to the college because you can pass without even turning a hair. You understand? And that is so egregious. It's so sick. I mean, for our education system.
But I'm glad that there's some professional response by some of the lecturers that are, holding the ground, that they wouldn't allow themselves to be reduced to that, to that level. That's good.
The other thing is, that they're doing the online program, and they have, I understand that over 3,000 students are on this online platform. The lecturers are complaining that, particularly the part-time people, that they're being paid $1,000 an hour. but the classes are so huge. And when you have to mark papers for 200 and something students in a class, you're getting $1,000 an hour. How does it balance out? I mean, I was approached by an institution to do some teaching, but I refused because it doesn't, the classes at that institution too, I understand, are pretty large. So when you gotta lecture to the students, then you have to spend the time, the amount of time you have to spend behind marking, it does not
P.
pay. Can't pay. Can't pay. You know, even when if you are full time, you should have a class with 200 students and all of that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And they are not increasing the emoluments neither for the lecturers who are full time and those who are part time. Right? And so they frequently have to be going into the schools and asking teachers who are in the classroom to also work with the college on a part-time basis and so on. But people are concerned about the fact that they're not being given proper remuneration for the services. And these are the things that they should look at instead of telling like people that they can't fail students who are performing poorly in the college. It's sickening, real sad. One more thing about education that I want to deal with. But before, because if you have 3,000 students on the online platform, they're talking about reopening the doors of the college just as they've done with the schools. Ogun, that is going to be a catastrophe because they don't have place to put them in the college. And then with the COVID-19 situation, which we must address, I don't know what's going to happen in the college if they're going to bring all those students on the campus. I don't know how it's going to work out, you know. But I don't, there is somehow some, I don't know what's wrong with the minds and the thinking of the people who are supposed to be guiding, in charge, administering the system. And you know, you're dealing with a government now where even though people know better, they will not speak
The fear.
because of fear, right? So they're gonna just complain silently to me, to their colleagues and so on, but nothing is going to happen, right? But we have to touch on the COVID, but the other thing is, the National Grade 6 examination, it was given to CXC to set the papers and to do the marking and to, you know, create a list of students who, their performance and so on, do their analysis and so on. But since the PPP has come into power, I've heard, I don't know if it's true, that they have taken that away from the CXC. It's a concern because CXC is an acclaimed body. It has no bias in terms of
Politics and
who
so,
gets what,
who get what.
and so on. And we know the nature of the PPP and their racist mentality in terms of, you know, so taking that back raises questions about the integrity of the examination, because we've had cases where papers were leaked and all these things, you know, and so, and students who should have been allocated or allotted certain marks or positions not being given that, and so on. So they skew the entire result so that it looks favorable to either an ethnic group or to someone. So an impartial body, for me, would have given more reliability and validity to the examination.
Yeah, more credibility.
Credibility.
But what is it? But okay, but I'm sure they haven't stated any reason.
No, they won't state reasons. When we, you know, they won't state reasons. What reasons will they give? Right? Except that they want to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't say that. So if that is the case, then I am hopeful that a decision will be taken to reverse that position and allow the CXC to continue to administer the exam. All right. But in light of we just said that they want schools are open, all the students are back in the classroom. The institution that really should be protecting us from COVID has had a spike in the number of medical personnel who are infected. And in the wider society, I think the last figure I heard is 700 and something, or it's gone to 900 and something in one day.
900 and something in one day.
In one day. So, what's really happening?
Well, I think it's clearly we're in a crisis situation with this new variant.
But they're saying the new variant, but they have not. The minister is only assuming that because of the spread, that the variant is here. They have done no kind of,
Well, they said they've sent things to be tested, and within a few days they will get the results. But the evidence,
yeah,
but the evidence seems to be very
suggesting
that it have. But I'm worried because one of the lucky things, not only for Ghana but the world, that this new variant is not as deadly as the original. And somebody was telling me that there's also they discovered very recently, a few days ago, a new variant. So we seems to be in a long haul with this COVID fight. But back to Guyana, we have been saying on this program that lamenting that we're not too happy with what the PP did in terms of the approach to the COVID pandemic. Remember when they came to power, when they tried to dismantle all the things that the coalition government have put into place. And I think the most dangerous thing that they did is that they signaled to the country that the virus is not serious and you're not take it too serious. When they open up to please the business people and the business friends. Because we were struggling as a country to let our population understand the seriousness of this virus and this pandemic. And when they came to power and they say, if they didn't come to power and the APMU, AFC was in power, they were closing the entire country, and bankrupt the economy. And they opened up the place, relaxed some of the measures and so. See, they create in the minds of the population, that this is not a serious and an urgent matter. And I think we begin now to reap the harvest of that mistake, And I think now, regardless of who did what, and as a country, we got to be very concerned and very careful, because this thing, if it really get out of hand, it could carry a lot of people.
Yeah, but they don't seem to be even edging towards any kind of stance in relation to the disease. I mean, the other Caribbean countries are pretty firm in their positions and trying to suppress the spread of the virus. But what they're doing all the time, look at during the holidays, they gave out new instructions, COVID guidelines, actually allowed people to do whatever they wanted, and then they themselves opened up Main Street for, so they are encouraging the spread of the virus in many ways, and we have to ask why, because I've always been asking for them to release the figures in terms of the ethnic composition of people who are infected, affected, have died, and they have not done that, so that we can get a proper assessment of what is really happening. Because you cannot put it past the PPP to, if they believe that it's affecting a population that is not aligned to them in a greater way than it is affecting a population that they believe is in their camp, that they will allow it to continue. And it is evident that a lot of the activities in African communities, the parties and all these things that are held, that they are being allowed to to just be held and for people to revel and, and then go home. It maybe not be the person who would have gone to the party, but they take the disease home, and the elderly people in the home and other relatives who are susceptible to such things become victims, you know, and it's really sad that the minister could be pontificating all the time on TV. But even in his dealing with it, he takes a very flippant approach to, you never get a sense that he's really serious. His tone, his mannerism, nothing suggests that this is a something that really should be dealt with in the way it should.
I mean, I don't know the minister well, you know, at a personal level. Um, but I sense, you know, I listened to him a few times. I sense he is trying to, you know, go out of his way to convince the country that his ministry has things under control and that the government knows what they are about. And I think that, you know, you see, that's the problem when you have a minister who is a minister in a particular area, but he's also a professional in the area. You know, normally, if you got a person is a minister of agriculture, but he's not really an agriculturalist, he's more open to advice from other persons. But when you got a man who feel
that
he knows it, sometimes you really have some problems. You know, it's hard to get past him like a stone wall. If he dig his feet in and he believes that he got his self-confidence, whether right or wrong, that he has the answers and he got things under control, it blocks out a lot of useful opinion. And I don't know whether the minister is suffering from that. But he must, and the government must recognize that with these recent numbers, that you can't be that sure and that confident. At least you're not fooling the public anymore. So it's not, you're not fooling the public. The most he could be fooling now is the cabinet.
The cabinet?
Yes.
No, but so you were saying that they are not in sync with what is happening?
But what I'm saying is that like every other thing, cabinet ministers they fight for their positions and they fight, you know, to show the colleagues that they're doing a good job. You know, and you have to convince your peer and probably the president that look, the ministry is in a good hand. I got this thing under control. But they can't. What I'm trying to say is, I think the public have come to a very clear position that the government is not handling the pandemic properly, and there's a crisis. I don't know whether the cabinet shares the view of the public.
Well,
so
the
I'm
cabinet
saying
shares the view. The cabinet shares if the president is mouthing exactly what the
minister is
saying, then the cabinet really is of the same mind. All right?
Yeah.
Because all of the utterances from your finale would suggest that things are under control and that, you know, there is no need to worry and so on.
Well, they're fooling themselves. Because they're fooling the public. I know across race, across party, people are concerned that the government is losing control, has lost control over the process.
Anyway, I don't know what's we just got to pray and hope that because even now you have, apart from the COVID, a lot of people are coming down with flu-like symptoms. And it's difficult now for people to distinguish whether they have the flu or
they have the COVID.
You understand? And then the hospitals, even though they're telling us that
they could deal with the understaffing.
They can deal with the understaffing and they can deal with everything. When you go, I know of one person who has been traveling to all of the hospitals, Georgetown, Melody, Mike Cooney. Now they're saying you must go to Fort Wellington just to get a biochemical analysis done and stool tests and so on. The machines in none of these institutions, none of them is working, you know. So for basic analysis and tests and so on, you ain't paying people money, and to do the test, it's 30 something thousand, $40,000 to get tests and so on. So poor people now are basically, you know, at their wits' end. I don't know how people are going to survive. Because you're telling us that the institutions are, you know, they're well equipped, and you know, the staff is adequate, and there is no cause for concern. That even with the high spike in COVID at the hospitals itself, that people are safe and you have it under control. And then to do the basic routine tests, you don't have the means to do it. How can you have an entire country all along the coast? All of the machines are down. And you're dealing with a health system that is catering to the poorer class of people across the country. You know?
Yeah, poor people not a priority, this government, boy. Poor people not a priority. And you see, when a country reach like ours, where the elite could get fairly satisfactory treatment in private hospitals in the country, and they have, you know, the means to go abroad in the Caribbean and to North America, the society is less, the government feels is less under less pressure to provide a proper medical service to the population. But when everybody depends upon the national service, you know, you have to maintain a certain level of quality, or else you get a lot of pushback. So they're not feeling pushback from the elite, so they don't care. Oh, poor people.
Well, don't lie to people. Don't tell people that it's all good, and you know, I mean, that things are okay, because the evidence is there that it's not. All right. So I don't know what's going to happen. But what are your suggestions, though, for in Barbados, even Antigua and Grenada and so on? They have been taking more enlightened approaches to dealing with the COVID situation, even if it's locking down for a week or. But this government doesn't seem like.
This is not locked. This government. You see, they've tied themselves into a corner, because they when they came to power, as I said, they put themselves in great opposition to lockdown. You know, so, and then they're so committed to their own support base. And I'm not talking about the rank and file Indian community. I'm talking about the business sector that supports them financially and provide the money for the elections. That is payback time. And they're prepared to pay back, you know. Wanted the PVP, you gotta give them credit, you know. When they strike a deal with, you know, the hustlers, you know, they try their best on it. And they will risk this country's, you know, population to satisfy that commitment, you know, and that is the kind of reckless politics that is characteristics of the Jaguar politics. But from his and their point of view, it has been successful for them, because it allowed them to hold on to power for 23 years, and then it helped them to get back power in the last election. So from their point of view, they see their line of march from their point of view as correct, and they're not going to shift easy. That it requires a lot of pushback from the society as a whole, or strategic sections in the society, you know, to get them to a realization that on these national policies that affects the entire nation, that cuts across party, cuts across ethnicity, that you have to handle it, you know, from a position of science. You have to push back your politics out of it. I mean, the pandemic is something that you have to be addressed if you want to deal with it successfully, as a medical and a scientific issue. And you can't allow partisan politics to be guiding your policy. But I'm convinced that is what is still guiding the PP's policy as they deal with the COVID. And there haven't been sufficient pushback in the society to make them, rethink their position.
Yeah. But you see, we have gotten to a point where we're taking everything now for granted. And even our lives now have become basically meaningless to us. But somehow, they as the government should be the ones to guide and inform the decisions of people in the broader society. That's what they're there for, right? To manage the affairs of the people. But they're not doing that. They're managing for, like you said, a select few in the society. The anyhow, this crisis, if it continues to spiral out of control, I don't know what's really going to happen to our society. They what was I going to ask you? All right, let's deal with your analysis of your current position of. I may be able to get back to what I wanted to ask you last time.
In terms of last week's,
Last week, very cut off.
Okay, I
You
mean,
were giving, saying that your
yeah.
current position.
Okay, last week was very cut off. I mean, I have subsequently after the program, tried to wrote a letter explaining my position, drawing person's attention that the discourse began, on this program, and we weren't able to complete it, and I tried to articulate it in the letter. So, in a sense, it has been, out there, but as we began this program, and we could probably just tie it up. Okay, basically, I was making the point that in our engagement, and say our as WPA, we engage in political situation from our birth. Okay, as multiracial politics, WPA, came out of a unity of Askari and IPRA, and Ratuna University, Walter came, and so forth and so forth. And we have always project the party as a multiracial organization. And I was making a point that when Rafi, Dev, and Roar entered the political mix, they began to question the WPA conception of multiracial politics and was a multiracial organization and so forth and so forth. And at some point in the polemics, the public polemics, I took a position that, look, I'm going to restrict my activities, my political activities to the African community. And I did so as a concession to the pervasive
Onslaught.
I don't want to say onslaught, but the pervasive argument in the Indian community that supported the Dev position. I've never, when Dev then began to make that argument and say publicly, I never hear anybody in the PPP question the Dev position that the WPA can't speak for Indians because the WPA is not sufficiently an Indian party. Okay? I never hear anybody PP say, well, look, that conception of politics, is wrong by Dev. I've heard no Indian activists, cut across the thing. And then it was supported by Indian voting behavior. They consistently vote from 92 right through, in block with the PPP. And I don't think you could dismiss that. You see, when in politics, an issue become a public issue, and it seeks to address a serious problem in the body politic of the country. You can't dismiss it if you're a serious political person. You know, the average politician give a kind of opportunistic response because they don't want to be on the bad side of nobody, and they will ignore it. But I always see myself not as a conventional politician. I see myself as an African revolutionary, non-conventional politician who genuinely trying not to make money out of politics, not to make politics a profession, but to use politics as a service to people. And I felt that, you have to listen to the other people in an ethnic society situation. And if they're telling you upfront, as matters stand, you really can't speak for us. You don't fully understand our position. Then I think, as an African activist, I think I had the right to give recognition to that and step back. And I stepped back and I did it publicly. Well, like many people, I did it publicly. I give the reason why I made a step back, and I step back. And since then, I've been articulating issues mainly, you know, from an African community standpoint. I've never interpreted that to be any hostility to Indian interests, but I have interpreted it to mean that I, OGUNSEYE, don't have the burden of arguing the Indian case, that the Indian representatives will argue the case. And I took it as a burden to argue the African case and the national case in as far as I feel I could. And that has been my position. But when I'm now, in politics, you can't be static. If you're to be useful politically, both as at the individual level and as an organizational level, your politics have to be nimble enough to respond to current challenges. And I am convinced that the oil and gas situation have changed Guyanese politics profoundly and opening us to a lot of money and prosperity, but also open up the countries to a lot of risks. Okay, that if politically we don't begin to build a consensus on how we deal with this tremendous wealth that we will be having, okay, we could get, the worst of the oil course. And given the divisions in the country, and we know the history of how these oil companies and these massive monopoly behaves in third world countries, they promote disturbance and confusion so that they could thief your money. And I think that the history have shown us, if you really, as a third world country, if you really want to protect your national resources and get the best out of it, then you have to develop in your body politics, some national consensus and understanding of how we move forward, in terms of this resource. And it is that reality that have forced me and influenced my timing, because there's something I've been thinking about a long time. If people carefully watch what I write over time, they would see I've always been saying that there's some issues that we need to discuss in this country, and we can't discuss because the political environment doesn't make it possible. And you have to be looking, as a political practitioner, for a time when you could insert yourself and when you could urge the country to entertain a certain level of discourse. So I've been always looking to see where one could be effective, and I think that that's what I want to say. That I will try my best, to begin to re-engage the Indian community in a discourse on some of these national issues. Of course, you know how they have played it. I become the greatest racist, David become the greatest racist, Koyana become the WP have become a black nationalist party, and the Indians in WP doesn't matter and all kinds of things. We know what the situation is. But I'm convinced that despite all all of that and all the negatives, the future of the country is important. And we have to try as WPA, as individual activists, you know, to use whatever influences we may have, however small it may be, to force a national realization that, you know, if Guyana is to continue as a united country and if we to really benefit from this tremendous wealth, we got to reconfigure our politics and our engagement. And that is what is driving my position.
Yeah, but I mean, eh, while that accusation is being made of the WPA, only a few days ago the question was asked of me, what is it that the people like Ejil and the Prime Minister and all of these who sit in the PPP and allow this onslaught and the African community to continue unabated, I mean, how do they feel in such an environment? And don't they ever raise a voice of concern? Really, you know, I can't answer the question. You know.
But people pose that to me, but I always tell people, and I've said here, that the Africans who is in the PPP, they go there for personal interests, you know, money, promotion, and things. I don't think they go there to fight for African concerns, and I don't know the PPP is a kind of party that permits that. You know, in the WPA we fight. Indian comrades, African comrades are free to raise in the party, outside the party, any of the ethnic concerns, and we disagree. I remember, you know, even you know, we have a long history, even in terms of the recent election crisis. I know within the WPA there were differences. You know, Indian comrades expressed differences in how, you know, the coalition and some of us are engaging in the elections, and we do that. And even if it's spilled into public, so be it. It doesn't. So nobody in the WPA is afraid to speak their positions, you know, on ethnic concerns. But I don't know the PPP permits that, so I don't know that those persons who go in the PPP is free to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't know what they do privately.
Mm-hmm.
But politics is not about private behavior. Politics is about public behavior. And in as far as the public record goes, from Sam Hines right down, you know, I have never seen any serious constructive criticism with any consistency that could be effective politically from, you know, blacks in the PPP. You know, but I mean, I hope with time it will change, but you know, I have no control over that. You see?
If they do criticize, they wait until they're out. And
when,
then
when it's irrelevant and not,
Yeah,
not
right.
of no consequence,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of the things I'm proud about the WPA. No matter how the costly and yeah, in terms of Guyanese political evolution of parties, the WPA stands mile tall over the rest of them when it comes to tolerance on ethnic discussions, political discussions. We could disagree with any one of the real leaders inside the party, outside the party, okay, and have a principle polemic, okay, that doesn't, you know, degenerate into hate and political bitterness and using, you know, your clout to victimize one another and so. Yeah, and it does make me very proud of the WPA.
Yeah. But one thing, the other thing I was going to ask you about, in this recent press conference, the new leader of the PNC, Aubrey Norton, has hinted that there is a possibility of challenging the oil and gas bill that was tabled and passed into law by the PPP. How do you view that?
The national resource,
Yeah,
resource bill. Okay. No, I think that wherever there could be a legal challenge. You see, I have, look, be honest, in my political activism over the years, I have never been a great believer, okay, in the courts and the legality, these legal things. I've come slowly. I remember you see always there in law books at the center, and he look into, for years of the laws and something, But I wasn't that kind of politician. I got problems with the system. I think the system as it is need change, and I've always been trying to throw my head in how to change this thing and get it right. But whether we like it or not, we are run by a constitution, we run by laws, and whether we like it or we like it not, we got to live by them, even if we disagree. So I see all this to see, and that influenced my attitude in the election crisis, from the no confidence motion, to the end of the elections and subsequently the crisis after the elections, where all of a sudden Guyanese had to deal with the importance of the court in an unprecedented way in our modern history. I can't remember at no time in my political life where the courts has been called upon to arbitrate into political matters, like what happened the last period, where we had all these challenges right up from the local court to the highest courts and so. So I am saying that in the context of this new legal awakening in the nation, that anybody, whether it's opposition leader, whether it's civic society, whether it's trade unions, anybody who believe that they have an issue that could be resolved in the courts should test it in the courts. And if the opposition leader feels that they have a good chance to get the courts to reverse what the government do, he should test it. They should test it in the courts. So I am in full support of the use of the courts. They try to resolve some of these political matters. But I will argue that we shouldn't depend on the courts. We have to prepare to resolve these matters through, political actions, And as I said on the last program, I really believe nothing short than closing down this country would be an appropriate response to what the PP did, But if people want to try the legal route, but you see the PP have a lot of control, or they could influence the timing of the legal process. That's probably the legal process in Guyana. I don't know that the courts will treat it as an emergency issue and to have a speedy hearing so that the court's decision, one way or the other, could impact on the situation in a timely way, or whether the courts will drag it out over time. And by the time the court's ready to address it, the PP don't consolidate. And so those are the problems you have. Personally, I have been saying whether how much confidence I will put in the legal process. But as a political practitioner, I'm very concerned that only a united action that closed down this country for a day will drive the PPP, into a position to realize that, look, we really got to, do something about this and retreat.
Define united action.
Well, by united action, I believe that nothing short of closing down the country, we have to build up a movement, trade unions, private sector, parties, churches, sports organizations, lot of columnists, writers, newspaper owners, newspapers, a massive consensus that, look, what happened with this bill and the way the PP is dealing with this oil fund and the oil resources is not in the best interest of the country, and we reject it, and we calling for them, to put an end to the bill. As I said the last time, the Indian farmers show you how to do it. They engaged the Indian government, until the Indian government had to rescind, legislation that they put in place. So it's not impossible. But in Guyana, in the context of the pandemic, because you see, that's the problem. Whatever we propose, you have to take into consideration the pandemic. And with this virus on the crazy march, strengthened my conviction that you have to find a form of response, okay, that takes into consideration the challenges of the pandemic and shape something that the people could do without feeling threatened by the pandemic. Bringing people in the streets in the large numbers, everybody can argue it is reckless politics. You're violating the COVID regulations, and many people may not even be willing to do it. But I think that if we could build up a consensus, a broad consensus, we could probably get Guyanese to stay home for a day and make the point that enough is enough. And I think that is where the energy should go,
Right.
as we do other things.
First, you got to convince the private sector
Yeah.
and some of the trade unions
Yeah.
and a part of the Guyanese population that
Yeah.
enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I don't get a sense that we anywhere near
Yeah.
convincing that section of the society that enough is enough. As far as they're concerned, we are not even close to being enough.
Well,
And there is, in far as it's benefiting them. So,
yeah.
we
But
were not,
but you see, no, you see, I understand that. You know, I don't think I understand that. I understand it very well.
okay.
I understand it very well. But you have to, you know, as political practitioners, we can't. We look. Ultimately, what happens in the country depends upon the people, the masses of people out there, where they stand in terms of their consciousness and their willingness to act or not to act. Now, the most we could do is to seek to provide information, to seek to use our understanding of social and political process to offer possible lines of marches and hope. This is all you could do. Hope that at some point, some one of those lines of actions people bite onto and a process evolve, you know, and that is the best you could do, you know. And I think that everybody is saying in the country, that's why I'm listening to people, we need to demonstrate something forceful for the PPP to understand enough is enough.
All right, bro. Well, I want to thank you for being on the program. Time has caught up with us, and let's hope that your optimism somehow becomes a reality, that the broader masses of the people begin to understand the importance of having fair measures in dealing with the oil and gas resources of this country, that all Guyanese should benefit and not basically one way or another. And so I'm trying to be as optimistic as you, but at this point I'm not. But it's the nature of our country, and as you say, we have to try. But it's been a pleasure being with you again on this program. I look forward to being with you again next week, when we continue to examine the political and social sphere here in Guyana, and hope that somehow, some way, by some means, that the change that we seek, that we are able to achieve. Do enjoy the rest of your evening, and look out for us next week, same time, on this program for Walter Rodney Groundings.